Yep.
So, hi everyone. Welcome to Funding Stories, episode 5, where we're interviewing amazing companies about their funding stories and their work with the government as well. I'm Yov Joe Sadan, and I'm here with Jacob. Jacob's a dear friend, president and founder of Elementum 3D. He's a great friend, and also, like, Elementum has been an awesome company to work with, kind of one of our favorites. So, super happy to have you. Just in a short note, and Jacob, you can go deeper into it, but Elementum 3D is they specialize in development, commercialization, and supply of groundbreaking high-performance 3D printing metals, alloys, ceramics, and composites. And material sets include aluminium, copper, nickel, steel, tantalum, tungsten, and much more. Super happy to have Jacob. Again, amazing results, and it's been great working with you. Jacob, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys today about our experience with Eagle Point and growing Elementum. So happy to be here.
Great. So by the way, people who are wondering about the background, that's the QR code. You can scan it or contact me at yoav@eaglepointfunding.com if you wish to speak with us or book a call. But let's just get right to it. Who's Jacob? I mean, you have a PhD from University of Colorado, a pretty extensive academic career since '06. What made you start the company?
Yeah, so actually it's the Colorado School of Mines down in Golden. I have my undergraduate master's and PhD from the Colorado School of Mines in material science and metallurgy. You know, my interest in starting a company and starting Elementum in the first place came from the experiments that I was doing and the research that I was doing at the university. But really, it was about a transition from university research, which might not go anywhere, to something real, figuring out how to implement things into actual products that people would buy and people would want.
So do you think if it wasn't for Elementum, you'd have stayed in academia, or you just had to take the research somewhere?
So there was no way I was staying in academia. There's too much of I think there's a lot of politics in academia, which get away from the science. And so because I was more interested in the science, which sounds kind of maybe backwards, I got into an industry that was really growing, that was cutting edge, that there was a lot of new research to be done. And so that's why I started the company in the first place, was being able to do the research and do things that actually have impact, and still work with the universities, still work with really talented, intelligent people. And I think that was, for me, the impetus for getting into it. But there's no way I was staying in academia. I was itching to go, itching to do things, itching to get things done. So.
Awesome. So kind of what does, in a more deep sense, what does Elementum actually do? What's the value you bring in agencies and companies and clients?
Yeah, so primarily Elementum, we focus on development of new materials. And when I say development, it's not just we got a result once. It's creating a new material that's designed for the 3D printing process, figuring out how robust that process is, seeing if it's repeatable, seeing if we can get the same results on our equipment as the same as someone else's equipment. So ultimately, our product is the material, the settings, and the know-how on how to make it, as opposed to just it's an interesting idea. It's something that people can take and implement in their own systems. And so we sell the material, but we don't just sell the material. We sell the material with the process and the post-processing, which is important as well.
How did you guys start?
So I started with a small amount of money from a private investor. And so we got going with a very small $100,000, which at the time was enough for us to get proof of concept and get things moving. Very early on, we went after a couple of different SBIRs in particular. And if you're not familiar with the SBIR programs, it's really meant for government funding of small research and small businesses to do innovative research. And we found a pathway in with the National Science Foundation first, which I highly recommend if anyone is getting into the SBIR program. The National Science Foundation is a great way to transition and learn how to do it, but at the same time, it's incredibly competitive. So you have to have a really game-changing concept and idea, but they're willing to take that risk on something that could potentially be really groundbreaking. So that's where we started as far as funding and really getting things going. I started in a small corner of a big warehouse, was renting just a small portion of it, even to the point of half of what we were renting, I was leasing out to some friends of ours that needed to store their camper. So it was just this little tiny desk in the corner of a building. And compared to where we are today, 6 years later, it's come a long, long way.
What were the biggest challenges in kind of the first funding rounds or just beginning?
Well, I mean, it's always a chicken or egg story, right? You already know or have the product, or you have the money and to be able to design and develop that product. And so, because of that chicken or egg problem, finding investors who would buy into the idea and the concept, there was a small amount of money, but you have to give away a lot of your company to do that. And then on the other hand, with going after government awards or SBIRs or state awards of those sorts of things, which are non-dilutive and help support that private investment. Those are hard to get into if you don't know the system and you don't know how to write these things and you don't know how to be competitive on those pieces. And so it's a bit of a struggle to, I think, put those things together. And you don't want to put the cart before the horse, but you have to have the cart before someone will sell you a horse. So it's sometimes tough.
So take us like 6 years down the road. You guys are now. What are you folks doing like at the moment? How are you doing? Like who are you serving?
Yeah, so primarily our customers are now commercial industrial customers who are purchasing things like um, material for engine blocks. They're purchasing products and parts for satellites, for communications, that sort of thing. We sell quite a few components involved in data centers and for cooling, that sort of thing. So it's really all over the board. But that doesn't mean we've stopped or slowed down our work with development of new products and materials. And whenever we're developing new materials, new products, new R&D, we're first looking towards internal funding, but supplementing that heavily with federal research grants to really be able to go after the newest, most interesting pieces. And so we're doing some of both, but it's coming from both sides. And we're now 37 employees, I think now, and we'll probably be 50 employees by the end of the year. And so growing quickly, adding a lot of capability, adding a lot of new projects, new products. So that's the way we look at it from the beginning: is how do we generate a new product?
So you said you started pretty early with an NSF grant. Why did you go after that one kind of fresh from the start? What made you go to the NSF at an early stage?
So the NSF, first of all, was relatively open. They had a lot of different topics and potential areas that we could address. So we were able to go after it in more of a general sense of new materials, and we were able to talk about how our materials were going to impact additive manufacturing in particular. Whereas a lot of the other SBIRs that we were seeing out there were either focused on, they already had a topic and we had to write to that topic. And so we were trying to fit a square peg in a round hole in some cases. So NSF was great for us to get off the ground because it was more open in just bring us your ideas and then we'll weigh those on the merit of those ideas individually.
So how are you using it now though? Like you're a mature company, you're growing almost doubling that size. Like how are you using it nowadays and
So
why?
now it's all about new products. So as we're developing new things, some of the benefit of SBIRs through like the Department of Defense or through NASA is because they are specific, they're telling us what customers want, not just the DoD customers, but that's also typically an indicator of what industrial customers want as well. So oftentimes, there'll be overlap and we'll have a range of customers that all want kind of a similar product. And then we'll go look at what are the SBIRs that are available out there to help us fund going after products that would then be useful for industrial customers and for the U.S. government as well. And so that's been our strategy going forward, is finding SBIRs and other types of grants to help supplement our R&D efforts, not necessarily our commercial efforts, but the R&D efforts to get new products up and off the ground.
It almost sounds like you're using R&D funding as a part of the biz dev part.
Absolutely, and that certainly is part of what the SBIR program also really promotes. Is ultimately the way it gets paid back to the U.S. taxpayer is the idea that your sales later on will generate more jobs. It'll generate more business, which they then tax, and then they get tax revenue back to help pay for these relatively modest amounts of initial funding for R&D. So ultimately, it's about spurring business so that business can do its thing. In which case, now we're paying all sorts of taxes and that sort of thing to pay off of those initial investments that the U.S. government is making. So it kind of works.
So would you mind like maybe sharing, if you can, how many awards have you won? What projects have you won?
We've won quite a few. And like I said earlier, there are some places that'll just go out and try and write to get the award. And it doesn't matter what it is, they'll just try and get whatever awards that's out there. That's not how we approach things. That's not, I think a lot of the SBIR programs are trying to avoid that sort of thing now as well. So while we have quite a few awards, the awards are all specific to products that we're intending to commercialize. And that's something that they're heavily going after as well. So total number of awards, I think we've been awarded in conjunction with also being a sub awardee on several awards. I think we've been awarded over 20 different federal grants.
Wow.
Sometimes we're the prime, sometimes we're the sub to another entity. And I would say majority of the time, we're getting to phase 2, which is the goal. That's always the goal. Phase 1 is about how do you sort things out, but it's getting to phase 2. That's the important part. The commercialization.
For person who don't know, do you want to share what's a phase 2?
Yeah, so SBIRs and a lot of these sorts of funding programs are broken down into different phases. The first phase is a relatively modest amount to help you get things started, do proof of concepts, put together what the project is going to look like. And then phase 2 is a larger award that is even more selective, that you have to apply for again after you received the phase 1 already. And once you apply for that, it's a larger award that helps you commercialize that product and really take it. So you go from a 3-month or a 6-month phase 1 to a phase 2 and phase 3, which are more about maybe 2 years, 1-2 years or longer, with a larger award really focused on commercializing that proof of concept that you had in phase 1.
Awesome. Would you mind sharing a little bit? Obviously, we've worked and we've won awards together. Can you share a little bit about the process and before the golden days of working with Eagle Point?
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, these awards really do have a lot of structure to them, and it being a federal program, there are a lot of ways that you have to, present it so that these people who are reviewing all these awards understand what you're saying. And that can be a difficult thing, particularly for people who are technical. It is not a technical paper. It's not you're writing up this technical, something that's going into a journal article or something like that. It really is talking about the technical part. That's certainly part of it. What your idea is, what differentiates it, but then also the business aspects of it as well. And as you're putting those things together, it takes a lot of experience to know what is going to be the clearest to an end use customer. And we certainly had a lot of struggles where we were trying to find people who could write, who knew how to write for these, because oftentimes you can have a great idea, but if you can't communicate it to the people who are reviewing it, it doesn't matter. And so we had a couple of struggles where we would bring in consultants and then they would try and help us, but they weren't able to spend enough time to understand what we were talking about in our technical side of it to be able to write about it. And so, that's when I think it was like about maybe 6 months ago, maybe longer than that now, Joe.
I think in September we started working together.
And so, over that even relatively small amount of time, it's really about then ramping up our ability to be able to communicate and put our proposals into formats that are very clear, that are easier for the funding reviewers to understand, and then also make sure that we're on top of making it clear what are the important parts to this particular call. And so that's been, I think, very helpful from Eagle Point in being able to help support putting together the commercial case, being able to present it to the reviewers properly, and I think most importantly, helping us identify potential awards that we might be well suited for, which is also something that, I'm running a business. I don't have time to go through, here's the best potential awards that we might go after. Or here's the ones that might fit our technology best. So that's the other reason that with Eagle Point, we've been able to identify awards that we might not have even applied for because we just didn't know they were there. And so I think there's been some big benefits along those lines. I think we've been awarded already three new awards over the past 6 months with Eagle Point, all phase one. So remember, I said the goal is to get to phase two, but I think we're well on our way there. And the only way to get to a phase two or a phase three is by getting that first award. So certainly, it's been a good experience so far.
Awesome. Thank you. I mean, in our conversation before you started, you've mentioned that you've been burnt by consultants in the past. With full honesty and transparency, how was the onboarding process and getting to start working with us?
It takes time. There certainly are things that you have to ramp up, you have to get going. So it does take time to make sure that everyone's on the same page, but it's about investing that time. And so yeah, the first 3 months, the first 4 months, you're working through things. You're trying to get some things put out there. It's not necessarily less work on that first award. Or even on the second one or first proposal, I should say, not award, but the first or second proposals, it's still a little bit of getting to know each other and you're getting to know our technology. We're getting to know how we can leverage and utilize your skills as well. So there's certainly those pieces of it. But as you mentioned, we've been burned in the past of just bringing someone on as a consultant. They'll come on and it is a lot of work to get them up to speed too, and oftentimes even more work because they're not necessarily completely familiar with how to write an SBIR or put an SBIR together. And so, they might be a great writer, they might be excellent, or they might, know your field technically really well, but it's often more time to get someone up to speed, and it doesn't save you anything on that first proposal together. And so, with a consultant, we had consultants changing out, then they would get a full-time gig somewhere else, and all this time we spent building up that knowledge and resource is then gone because they're working on someone else. A full-time person on staff is very expensive. And even that one individual full-time person, they may not have near the amount of resources or knowledge about what awards are coming down the line or what awards might be perfect for you. So I don't discount having someone on staff, and that can be very helpful, but it's also very expensive. So it's kind of a balance of how do you make sure you're getting the most out of someone to help write awards, and that's ultimately the reason that we decided that to have Eagle Point help support us. But certainly I know there are struggles just getting up and started. But
Well, what do you think companies, you're speaking with a company who just wants to start, what do you think companies should know about the process?
There's quite a bit of regulatory work that you have to get through first, as far as I didn't realize the amount of just federal programs you had to sign up and know and be a part of, whether that's sam.gov, whether that's logging into the individual SBIR sites, and then understanding as well what are your billable rates, what are reasonable billable rates, because that can be something that is hard to kind of determine as well. Is how much, what if you're proposing too much in one category or another, how do you manage that? So all those different things can be, I think, were the most surprising parts to me when I was first starting and first putting down on paper what a proposal might look like. Because the technical portion of it was easy. I mean, relatively. I mean, it's a few pages. That's what I knew. That's what I had been doing for years. But the other aspects of it were pieces that I didn't have that certainly took a while to get under my belt.
So how do you see next steps? I mean, together we've won 3 awards. If I can share kind of with the Air Force, NASA, Navy, like
Yeah.
what are your next steps as a company? What are your next steps in development?
Yeah, so the new products that we're putting together, it's really about finding those customers within those fields. So that phase one is all about that initial proof of concept. But ultimately, you're trying to sell the idea and turn it into a product that you're going to sell a lot of, so that it's a commercial product that people are purchasing. So that's really the next step is how do we get phase two? How do we make sure that our phase one is successful enough that then we can make a strong proposal on phase two? Um, and then, so I think those are the real next steps. That 3 awards is a significant amount, especially if all 3 of those go into phase two. That'd be great, and that's the goal. But we have to perform on those awards now that we have 3 of them. So I expect we will be looking for more phase ones, but it's really going to be about a focus on writing those phase twos because the phase twos really is the goal to here's how we actually commercialize something.
Awesome. Like, can I ask what are the plans for Elementum like 5, 10 years down the road?
Yeah, so we're expanding quickly right now. We're in the middle of our Series B funding round, and so we're looking to expand pretty heavily. We just opened our second facility, and we're looking to open a third facility by the end of this year. And that translates to down the road large government contracts, large contracts with customers. We've been invited to apply to some very large awards, BAAs that are on the order of 50 million to $100 million. And so those are big awards that we're going to be going after in the next 5 years now that we are set up to be able to actually perform on those types of contracts and bids.
Awesome. Anything else? Anything you want to share with the people? Should they know? Should they contact you? Type of person you'd be looking to connect with?
So I would say the first thing is never rely on government awards as being the thing you're selling to an investor. Investors don't want to hear that. Investors want to hear about your product that you're going to sell. The awards are nice, non-dilutive, supportive funding, but when you're selling a concept to an investor and you want to bring in some real funds to be able to break that chicken or egg cycle, um, really rely on making sure you make it clear here's my product, here's the thing that we're developing with the support of these non-dilutive funds that are going to add to the money that you're putting in. And I think that's a really important thing that I learned early on, that was important to investors, and it's something that has been made clear to me several times that never rely on the government contracts as being something that is really attractive to an investor, because it's not and it shouldn't be. And so I agree with that. But use them as a tool to suggest here's how we're going to develop our new products, and here's how we're bringing in non-dilutive funding to really help support that. And I think that's been important to us.
Awesome. That's actually really important. The people who are listening or might be listening later on, is there somebody you'd want to cooperate or work with, or you guys are flying solo?
Yeah, no, I mean, primarily we're selling a product that's a consumable. It's the ink for these metal 3D printers, and so anyone who's manufacturing complex components, whether that's say a cooling device or a manifold or aerospace components, those are the types of people that we really like to work with designs that are hard to make through any other process. Oftentimes, there's things that we can really go after in additive manufacturing, and we can help support you in your development of being able to manufacture your own components in-house with high quality, high strength materials. Those are the types of people that we work with a lot, whether that's the big guys, who are in Fortune 100, or small startup companies with 2 people and an idea.
Awesome. So, if without further ado, I think I'm done. Jacob, thank you so much. This was extremely helpful. Thank you again for coming. I highly recommend anybody who would want to work with Jacob or Elementum. They're awesome, really fun to work with, and they're a great company. If you want to see what it's like to work with us, you can take your phone and scan the QR code or contact me at yoav@eaglepointfunding.com, and we'd love to hopefully help you as much as we've helped Elementum. So thank you so much, Jacob, and hope to see you soon.
Wonderful. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.